Happy Samhain, everyone. I'm Reverend Bo. What we're going to do today, I'm going to really kind of jump into this and not do a whole lot of explanation with it because we do have some limited time for us. But I'll go over a couple things right off the bat that we'll need as we get started. If you saw my posts earlier, one thing that would be really helpful, if you had pre-measured items, that's great. If not, I will make sure, I know the ingredients list is on the Facebook page, but I'll make sure that all the instructions get posted once we're done as well. So a couple things you'll need outside of the ingredients. You got a sifter around, not necessary, but helpful. You'll need a whisk so that you'll be able to do the glaze. If you have any sort of cookie cutters you can use, that works as well. Otherwise, you can just do it by hand, whatever you prefer. Couple spatulas, and then a spoon for mixing. And then one or two mixing bowls works out well as well. And then make sure you have some sort of a baking sheet, cookie tray, anything like that. So to kind of get into it, so a brief history with soul cakes. So the soul cakes originate back in kind of the Middle Ages. At least most of the textbook answers you'll get will say that. If you look it up online, a lot of it all refers to Christian or Catholic backgrounds and history. But if you look deeper, most of those things came from pagan traditions. So who knows where it really actually started. And at the end of the day, my belief system is, especially when it comes to Samhain is about connecting with your ancestors and your family. And I met a practitioner years ago, and they had a great philosophy. I met with them. The whole group of them did an entire ritual, but when they did prayers, they didn't do pagan prayers. They did different Catholic prayers. And at the end of it, I was really confused. I asked them why, and they said, well, here's the thing. If we're reaching out to our ancestors, we want to reach out in a way that they're going to recognize it. And they knew that most of their ancestors weren't pagan. So I thought that was a really neat way to kind of look at it. So if you find something that you say, well, wish it was pagan, or you're kind of looking at those things, if you're a pagan purist, it's okay. This is one of those great traditions. So soul cakes go back to kind of the origins of trick-or-treating and what they would call souling, where a lot of times kids would kind of ritualistically go door to door and beg for sweets, cakes, things like that. And as well, it goes back to some superstitious traditions based around All Souls Night and our recently departed being able to come back from the dead to visit their loved ones, but at the door, you didn't know if it was a good spirit or a bad spirit, things like that. So soul cakes are a way of appeasing whoever showed up. So that's the intent behind it. So we're going to jump right into it. We've got a number of different things here. So first, what we'll do, first thing, if you haven't already, one of the ingredients, we need a 2/3 cup of butter, softened. So actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw it in the microwave really quick, probably just about 20 seconds or so. It is absolutely not necessary, but makes it a little easier. So we'll start that. And then while we're doing that, if you want to go ahead and just grab one of your mixing bowls. And your flour is going to be the thing you need next. For the flour, you need about 2.5 cups for it to be, not a whole lot. And you can do it one of two ways. Back when I was in high school, I had a home ec teacher who swore up and down that if you ever use flour, you must use a sifter. It is not 100% necessary, but the idea is ultimately, if you sift it, it breaks down the flour a little bit, allows it to cook a little faster. So, and helps mix the ingredients up a little bit. So I actually pre-sifted that, so I did it just for demonstration, but that's the idea behind the sifting there. And out of all of the home ec things I learned, that was the only one I retained. Don't know why, it's just kind of one of those things. All right, so the next step, what you're going to want to do, you're going to take the flour in the bowl. And this is one of my favorite parts. I am not great at baking, really not. It's not one of my strong suits. Not that I'm horrible in the kitchen, but for when it comes to baking, things like that, for me, it's making magic. an alchemic aspect to it and really putting that energy and working with it. And that's what I enjoy about doing this. So the reason I like this recipe as well, use your hands. You can use mixing bowl or mixing utensils, things like that to kind of blend this up. But I really feel like being able to actually put your energy into it really makes a difference. I firmly believe that there's a strong reason to why grandma's cooking always tastes the best, right? Because she has had a lifetime of knowing how to put that energy into what she's making. So, so if you just want to take your butter here and just pour it straight in your flour, if you need to, spatula to get the rest out. And then at that point, what you're going to do is just take your hands and just stir it, mix it up. Now, traditionally, what I would do is, if I'm doing this, really, as I'm doing this, I'm, again, putting that energy into it. I'm thinking about, what I'm trying to accomplish with these soul cakes, which in our whole household, I like to make them, and we use them for offerings. Samhain night, we normally do sort of a dumb supper where we'll, have dinner. We'll set a plate out at the dinner table for spirit, load it up with all the things we've been eating, and then normally place it outside. And then on one of our altars, something like that. And then the other thing I like to do is, as we go to bed that night, take a small plate of them, put them out on the front doorstep. Again, it's that superstitious thing of who knows what spirit might arrive within the night. So once it's done, it's kind of hard to see where you're at here, but it'll kind of like breadcrumbs, I suppose, is kind of the texture to it. But that's when you're going to know it's mixed. So next, what you want to do is you're going to take all of your dry ingredients with it. So sugar, a whole bunch of sugar. Nothing makes cooking better than a ton of sugar. Mix that in. And then the other ingredients that this recipe calls for, and I know anybody watched the Facebook pages earlier today, I talked about experimenting with it, right? If this is magical alchemy right here, it all goes to what you put into it and the intent of what you're putting into it. So a couple things that traditionally go into it, we've got half a teaspoon of nutmeg. Nutmeg is fantastic from a correspondence point of view. Nutmeg has a lot of really cool things to it. It amplifies energy. It's used a lot in divination. What else? A lot of different things like that. Encourages vision. That's the other good one. So all things that are good and helpful on Samhain. We've got half a teaspoon of nutmeg. So we put that in. That protects the home. Again, if we're putting things out for spirit, we want to keep away the bad ones, right? So you want them to protect the home. And then we've got, you can use, technically the recipe for this calls for mixed spice. In the US, we don't normally have mixed spice. Mixed spice is comparable to like pumpkin spice, apple spice. So those work just fine. But we put those in correspondence-wise because they're magically delicious for fall foods. That's all I got. And again, just mix it up real good. The next step, which I totally forgot to bring, we need an egg. Please don't look in my fridge. It is not magically delicious. So, I said 2 eggs. That's right. I almost just put in 1. So what you want to do is just crack your eggs just like normal. And then what we'll do is we'll kind of whisk the eggs real quick before we actually put them in. To do that, you can just use a fork, spoon, whatever works out best for you. And again, circle around, right? Anything that I'm doing, all the little items I'm doing, anytime I'm mixing, stirring, I'm always trying to put that energy into it and really think about the intent behind why we're making them, right? So we put that in. And then, just like normal, mix it up, nice and gross. If you got the kids with you, they'll absolutely love this or absolutely hate it, and we'll never want to make these again, but hopefully they'll love it. But just mix it up real good so that all of the ingredients are in there. And then the tricky part is always getting them off your hands, of course. So everybody in the feed knows I did totally wash my hands before I did this. Make sure you do that. And then the last spot, what I'll do, I get all that off my hands, rinse them off just a little bit. That kind of worked. So now the last two steps in this, I guess, are one, you want to add, I believe the recipe is 2 tablespoons, if I remember, of vinegar. And there's a step to this that I think Lori, asked the question earlier about chilling this. And ultimately, there is a step. Some of these recipes do require chilling. The recipe that I've worked off of here actually talks about just putting it in a bowl and putting a wet cloth over it for 30 minutes, half an hour, which should create the same chilling effect. To be honest, I've tried it both ways. I really haven't found a benefit one way or the other. They both tend to work. The end result, in my opinion, is pretty much the same. So I might have some hardcore baker who's going to be upset that but that's that. So in this case, I'm not going to do that today. And then the last thing I'm going to do, this is again really comes down to your preference. One common thing that's used in these recipes is raisins or currant. You can use, I've also made them with like chocolate chips. I've done a number of different things. What I tend to prefer is I just have a kind of a mix. This is gold raisins, dried cherries, and some other dried fruit. I'm blanking right now, but it's fantastic. So I like putting those in there. It's really your own preference. And we're gonna mix those in real well. And voila. So the next step, of course, the most fun step, or one of the most fun steps, at least if you ask a lot of kids, is we're going to do a little bit of rolling it out here. So I'm going to take just a little bit of flour, put it on my counter here. Helps to keep it from sticking. You don't have to go too crazy with it, but just a little bit. And then plop our big glob of stuff here. First, I'm just going to work it in with my hands. By the end of this, you should have dough in underneath all of your fingernails and just pretty much everywhere in your kitchen. And then what I'll do is take just a rolling pin and just roll it out. Now this one, a little stickier than normal. And then what you can do, what I like to do is one of two things. Sometimes, again, if I want to put my energy into it, I might just clump them, just kind of like you would normal cookie dough, and put those on sheets. You can roll it out flat, use cookie cutters, whatever the case may be. Mine needs a little bit more flour. So again, the idea is just work the recipe, right? Put your energy to it. Think about your ancestors. Think about your loved ones. But not only that, think about what you've got coming on in the next year. What is it that you want to bring into your life? What are the things you want to do? This is a really good time to not only celebrate the things of the past, but also to prepare for, the next year, because obviously this is the Celtic New Year. So what we're going to do is I got my baking sheet here, and I'm going to do a couple different here. I'm gonna do some just kind of flat, just by hand. You don't want to make these too thick. This recipe, they are called soul cakes. They're probably a little bit more like cookies. If you saw the picture of the finished ones I posted earlier, you'll see that it is a very dense recipe though. It's a very heavy sort of baked good. It's not, doesn't tend to be real light and fluffy. By the way, while I'm doing this, one thing that I would highly love is if you are making these today, as the day goes on, as they get done, post them to the Circle Facebook page, share them with everybody. I'd love to see how it all turned out for you here. Especially right now with everything going online and us connecting that way, being able to share those little things, I think make a really big difference. So for sake of time, I'm gonna put the rest of this away because I want to make a different variation of that a little bit later here. And one more time to rinse off the hands. And actually, one more thing I will show you in case anybody here didn't see the Facebook post I put up earlier. I will show you, kind of walk up to the camera here. There's one other aspect of this that is real common. So as you can see, before you bake it, if you choose to, I like putting in runic symbols, ogham, pentacles, things like that. The traditional way is actually to put a cross on it. And I say traditional because we're looking back at assuming this is a Christian tradition. But putting a cross on it, obviously a cross is very symbolic in that side of the world, but also a cross on any sort of baked good represented an alm for the poor, sort of thing. So I've seen people cut into it. I've seen people take their raisins or whatever, do it that way. Again, explore, experiment with it. Whatever makes sense for you, your family, and your traditions, absolutely go for it. So I'm going to throw these in the oven here. And the oven, I didn't mention in the beginning, it was in the Facebook post, but oven should be at about 350. What you'll do is you'll watch for it to normally take about 15 to 20 minutes to bake. The one thing that is a little tricky is with this recipe, they don't necessarily brown. As you saw the example I had, they're pretty white. So a lot of times you might look in and think they're not done because they're not kind of giving that golden color to it, that sort of thing. But I promise you, they're totally cooking. So while that's going, the last thing, if you want to grab your other mixing bowl here, is you want to create a glaze for it, right? There's a lot of different recipes. There's tons of standard glazes. If you don't want to do this, you could use frosting. You could, I've seen people who've drizzled melted chocolate and caramel, stuff like that over it. So again, whatever makes sense for you, whatever you're going to enjoy. And again, if these are for your loved ones who've passed, what would they enjoy? Like my grandmother absolutely loved caramel. Like that was her thing. So if I want to do that for her, I might make one for her. I might make one for my grandfather who really loves strawberry and put something like that in it. So experiment, play around with it. But the recipe that I showed was just kind of your basic glaze, which is a couple different things. So we've got 2 cups of powdered sugar. This will actually make a lot of glaze, which will make the kids happy later. And then there's 2 other things you want to add to it. One is the recipe that I posted has half a teaspoon, I believe, half a teaspoon or teaspoon, something to that effect, of vanilla extract. Again, you can use a different extract if you want. I've heard people that have experimented with like citrus or orange extract. The one thing I kind of joked about it in the post earlier is that last night I experimented and tried to use mint. That will work out very great if you like all of your baked goods to taste like toothpaste. so I don't suggest that one. But you can use milk, almond milk, kind of whatever makes sense for you, whatever you enjoy. A couple of the things that I've played with, I actually use mead. Yes, this is a family workshop, but we've got adults in every family. So mead mixing in instead of the next ingredient works just fine. But what I've used here and what I really enjoy is actually this is pure maple syrup, not pancake syrup, not pancake syrup, but actual maple syrup. About 4 tablespoons, and I put that in there. And now is when you want your whisk, wherever it goes, and you're just going to whisk it until you get a nice glaze to it. Now, what I've found every time I've made the glaze is it all varies quite a bit, depending on what you use. So for instance, what I'm working on right now, if you use like a maple syrup or something like that, as you can see, it gets very thick. That's why I like using the maple syrup. It holds the flavor really well and it glazes really well. But if you need to, I always suggest starting with less of whatever that is, whether it be water, milk, whatever. And as you go, if you need a little more, just add it. You can always add a little bit more liquid to it to kind of break it up. And if you find yours is too runny, give more powdered sugar. You're going to make more glaze, but again, today is the day for sweets and a lot of things like that. So, and you just whisk it up real fine. So what I did was I need a little bit more maple syrup, so I actually just put a little bit of water in there, kind of thinned it out a little bit. It does tend to be really runny at first as it sits. It will definitely harden as time goes on. Or if you like me, you never end up getting to spread it on there. You just get little cups of it and you dip the cookie in like it's milk, because that's totally normal. And then what you want to do is when it comes time, once your cookies or soul cakes come out, you just take a little spoon, something to that effect, anything that works well, and just drizzle it over your cookies. I keep saying cookies, or your soul cakes, to your heart's content. And that's it. Anything past that, you could decorate them even further. You could, again, do what sounds right to you. This is kitchen alchemy at its finest, in my opinion. So whatever feels right in the moment, go with it. I like starting with a recipe, but especially when I'm doing something like this where I have intent behind it, I just play with it. What makes sense in the moment? Worst case scenario, next time to not add, for instance, mint extract because you don't want your soul cakes to taste like toothpaste. But play around with it, right? All of the best practitioners, magicians, witchcraft practitioners, everybody have experimented, figured out what worked, what didn't, what they like. It's all about putting your own intention and your own meaning into it. So I think that's it. So what you're going to want to do, we're going to be coming to a close here in just a minute or two. But obviously we put the cookies in. If you were cooking with me in live time, you probably got another 10 to 15 minutes before they come out. And then when they come out, just let them cool. If you've got a cookie rack, you can always use one of those to keep them cool. But at the end of the day, use what you got. So I kind of spun through that. I knew we didn't have much time. We got through it. We got a couple more minutes. If anybody has any questions about it, feel free to throw it in the chat. We got a couple minutes. My lovely assistant off screen here has gotten view, so she can relay any questions to me if there's any on there. How long do they cook? So about 15 to 20 minutes is really all you need for them. I've had them go longer, sure, but like I said, like I'll bring one up to you here. Again, come close to the camera. So as you can see, this is actually one that I made last night. It's got a little glaze to it, but as you can see, it retains more the color of like a sugar cookie versus like a chocolate, your traditional chocolate chip cookie that might brown a little bit. So but if you put it in there 15, 20 minutes or so, you'll be all right. So good question. What else? Oh, one other thing, I did post on the page, there is a traditional souling chant. So souling, or song, not chant necessarily. So during All Hallows Eve, when the kids were out doing it, there was a couple traditional songs that were sung, and there was one specifically that was recorded by a priest back in the 1830s or 70s, somewhere in there. It's kind of a neat story. It was All Hallows Eve was happening. Kids were running around and doing their thing, and a priest was listening to it, was kind of inspired by it, and actually grabbed a little schoolgirl, had her sing it. He transcribed the whole thing, and a couple of years later, it was actually published by a folklorist author, and has kind of turned into folklore. And after up until, I don't know, about 1950s, there's actually many different variations of it that have come out, even by some more popular folk musicians. So in the post earlier today where I said Soul Cake Update, I did post it in there, a version of that song. Feel free to check it out. It's kind of, like I said, lots of different tradition with it. So any other questions over there? All right. Wonderful. So if you have any questions after the fact, you can find me on Facebook. Feel free to just shoot me a message. Like I said, name is Reverend Bo on Facebook, Bo Nelson. And then in a little bit here, I will post the full instructions for cooking in case you just were viewing and want to do it later. But again, let me know how it turns out. The question was, are they supposed to be soft or crisp? They're a little bit in between. They are, like I said, they're a very dense sort of cake. Trying to think of what to compare it to. It'd be like a dense sugar cookie. As you can tell, it broke pretty easy right where it was, but it's not going to be. You shouldn't have to chew real hard, but it is a heavy sort of cookie. So hopefully that answered the question there. So outside of that, I think we're good. Again, I hope you guys all have an amazing Samhain. Post, let us know what you thought of the workshop, how they worked out for you. And I hope you enjoy the rest of Circle's online Samhain festival today. So happy Samhain, blessed be.